All right. Good evening. Crazy days, isn't it? Crazy days. We've got some crazy stuff going on right here, and I'm not exactly sure what the heck is happening. We've got obviously a huge breaking news story. I think there's probably a lot of people who are a little bit suspicious about exactly what's going on. So I think we have to talk about this. We have to figure out exactly what's happening. And I say, instead of all this little chit-chat, let's get right into it. This is the news of the day. All right, so the news of the day starts, of course, well, I didn't set this up properly, so all right, let's have a look at this. This is, there we go. This is the picture of the pipe bomber, this dude. Now, is this that guy? Here's the thing. I'm going to assume, for now, I'm going to assume yes. I'm going to assume yes. But I have a couple of questions. And I think probably most of you have a couple of questions as well. It doesn't seem, it's not very clean right now. And I think the reason it's not very clean is because this does not necessarily conform to the theories that we've had, and the theories that we've had make logical sense. And as far as I know, from the information that they have released about this guy so far, it seems like too much of a coincidence, and I'll explain why. I know people are disappointed in Bondi because there haven't been enough arrests in Washington, D.C. I know people are a little bit disappointed with Kash Patel and even Dan Bongino. There was a report recently by people within the FBI don't really have total confidence in either Dan Bongino or Kash Patel. They both came out criticizing Miranda Devine, like pretty hardcore actually, which I didn't think was fair because, you know, look, these guys know Miranda Devine. They know she's an absolutely excellent journalist, probably one of the last actually good journalists, and they all like her. So I don't know what the problem is. I've been lucky enough to meet Miranda Devine, and let me tell you, I'm a pretty quick judge of character. I can assess pretty quickly whether somebody has poor intentions or not. She's legit, as far as I could tell. I don't know her well. I just met her the one time, but she seemed very much legit to me, and she's done some amazing work. So why go after her so hardcore? Well, I think when you get personally attacked, certainly, you get upset by that. There's an emotional reaction. I get that. I get it. But in the case of Miranda Devine, I feel like they should give her the benefit of the doubt and say, look, this is how I would have responded if it were me, if I were like the senior director or whatever, the FBI, and some journalist came out and attacked me, a journalist that I liked. At the end of the day, you're going to get people in the agency who aren't going to like you, even conservatives. It's because they're bringing people in from the outside, and they probably think these guys don't know what they're doing. That's a natural thing, I think. But I still support Dan Bongino. I still support Kash Patel. I still support Pam Bondi. I have confidence in these guys, even though they're not going as fast as we would like. And we will get to a story about that later, because there's a guy that I found on X that I do think speaks for a lot of us and our frustrations about how things haven't gone as fast as they could. But let's get into the actual story. Let's read about this real quick. Who is Brian Cole? It irritates me that his last name is Cole, because my last name is Coles, spelled K-O-H-L-S. I'm Coles with a K. But still, it's too close for my comfort. I don't like the fact that this guy has a similar sounding name to me. All right, who is Brian Cole? FBI identifies suspect in January 6th D.C. pipe bomb case. In a move that could soon bring closure to a mystery investigated by federal law enforcement for nearly 5 years, the FBI announced a person has been arrested for allegedly planting bombs in Washington ahead of the Capitol attack on January 6, 2021. Now, apparently he had this bomb equipment for some time. He bought this stuff like a year before, so he had figured out how to make these bombs, and he had them. He was like going, okay, where do I put these? How do I use them? You know, then there was the January 6th protest, and so from what I understand, he realized, okay, this is a good moment. No audio. What do you mean no audio? Is people getting no audio here? It shows audio from my end going out. I'm trying to read your comments here, but nobody's commenting. Maybe I'm getting some kind of bug. YouTube is messing with my show. Well, okay. I'm not getting anything from you guys, so I don't know what's going on here. Ah, okay. It's good. Okay, audio's okay now. All right, I don't know what happened. All right. Trump. Okay, so anyway. Now, real quick, I'm going to interject about the old case. So there was a case, I don't want to say an old case, an old speculation, right? So this was maybe, I don't know, a couple weeks ago. The Blaze came out, and they, Glenn Beck, and this was reporting that was done by a guy named, who I've also had a bit of an interaction with myself on X, just texting, so I haven't met him personally. But Steve Baker, I think, is also legit. And he came out and he reported who he believed the pipe bomber was based on the forensic evidence of this pipe bomber's walk, what they call the gait. And he believed that it was a woman who worked for Capitol Police who eventually moved into intelligence. So I actually contacted people in DC that I know who are familiar with this, and they came back to me and said, no, it's not her, but this is the idea. They actually like Steve Baker. They think he's well-intentioned. They think he's a good journalist, but they felt like he got too enthusiastic about some bit of evidence that actually wasn't accurate. And then he made a bunch of connections from that also weren't accurate. So he was employing what we might call confirmation bias, right? He had what he believed was the truth, and then he found connections to support that, and then he went with it. And that's kind of why that story disappeared, because he went to people that he trusted in DC, and they walked him through it and said, no, look. From what I understand, and I'm not going to take this with a grain of salt, because this is what I inferred from what was told to me. This wasn't told to me directly. But what I understand, or what I believe is true, is that she's like a hardcore, patriotic, conservative, Trump supporter type person. And she definitely did not do the bombing things. And so this was a bit of an unfortunate circumstance, right? And I don't believe that she's going to sue the Blaze. I don't think she's going to sue Steve Baker. I don't think it's anything like that. I think she's just kind of trying to get it to go away because it was a mistake. It was an honest mistake. So I think that's where that went. So that's not, from what I understand, that's not a path that's reasonable to look into. All right. I'm looking through the chat real quick. Audio's good. Okay. Everybody seems to be all right. All right. So let me read through the rest of this because, yeah, it just doesn't seem to, look. Well, I'll explain that in a second. All right. The suspect was identified as Brian Jerome Cole Jr., 30, of Northern Virginia. That's important in my mind. That's actually important, the fact that he's in Virginia. Because what's also in Virginia, guys? The Pentagon, Langley, the intelligence offices. All right. Attorney General Pam Bondi said in a Thursday, December 4th news briefing, the pipe bombs were placed near the D.C. offices. Well, we know all about that. Federal law enforcement officials said they located Cole by using evidence they already had. Also important, not a new tip, including cell phone data purchasing records that had a special team of investigators who was brought in to reevaluate. That evidence has been sitting there collecting dust, Bondi said. Now, so this is the really weird thing to me. There's one thing about this whole thing that I don't understand. Two things to me that are suspicious, but one thing that is really weird. Why the hell, if they had this evidence, now, I've heard reporting where they said that they went to like 1,200 homes or something and knocked on doors, and they had all these leads, and so maybe this guy got kind of like lost in the jumble of information. Audio is going in and out. Mic is good. Okay, this is good. Yeah, I don't know what's going on. On my end, everything is correct, so I don't know what the heck's happening. Okay, somebody in the comments, Trump 420 wrote, hair transplants still look incredible. I don't have hair transplants. Who would write that? That's evil. Don't spread that rumor. I do have a friend with hair transplants, though, and what's funny is his hair looks pretty good. And then he told me he went to Turkey. If you want to get hair transplants, by the way, which they can do amazing work. I have met several people with hair transplants that specifically went to Turkey to get them. Amazing. And he told me, and after that I couldn't stop seeing it. Like you can tell sometimes if it's not really, really good work. And I'm like, why did he tell me? If he had never told me, I would never have noticed. But anyway. All right. So that's neither here nor there. What an a-hole. Don't tell people that. This is real. I'm 46. This is my hair. So I'm pretty happy about this. Sometimes when you have something that's good, you don't really appreciate it, but yeah, people get pretty devastated when they lose their hair, which I don't necessarily get, because like look at Jason Statham, he looks awesome. If you lose your hair, it's not necessarily a bad look. All right. That evidence has been sitting there collecting dust, Bondi said. Absolutely just mind-blowing to me. I get that maybe the shuffle of like, 1,000 different leads or something like that. But from what I understand, the very little information that we have, the evidence seemed pretty rock solid. Like they had a lot of evidence. It wasn't like they had just like a phone record from around the area. It's like they knew that this guy had bought exactly the right materials for this, for these bombs that they found. And he was there on the day, in that area from the cell phone records. That's probably, you're not going to find that matchup very often. So like, why didn't they bring this guy in during the Biden administration? And this is the crucial question. Because I think for a long time, everybody believed that this was a psyop or part of the bigger psyop of January 6th. We've got a Trump rally, if you will, a protest, if you will, on January 6th. Trump supporters en masse walking into the Capitol, some of whom were a little bit, maybe a little bit audacious, a little bit, you had one guy, Ray Epps, screaming, "We're gonna go into the Capitol," who almost everybody believes was some kind of an intelligence asset or something, some kind of provocateur. And then we find out more recently that we had 274 FBI agents saturating the crowd in January 6th. Now, they say they came in afterwards for crowd control, but why would you send plain clothes, because they were plain clothes FBI agents, into the crowd for crowd control? Nobody's going to believe you. Hey, everybody, I know I look like the rest of you. I'm dressed totally normal, but you're going to have to trust me. I'm an FBI agent, and we're going to control the crowd here. And I don't remember seeing any footage. I mean, everybody had cameras. There was like 1 million cameras there. I don't remember any footage of plainclothes FBI agents even attempting to control the crowd. So this idea that they were sent there for crowd control, which, by the way, was a Kash Patel thing. He came out and said that. I don't believe that at all. I don't know where he got that information. I don't know why he's convinced of that. I don't know why he would put that out there. That annoyed the hell out of me. Look, almost everybody on the right believes that J6 was a psyop. I assume there's some like never Trumpers out there still who don't think it was a psyop. But I mean, we all believe that it was, okay? So it always seemed to us like a crazy coincidence that there was these pipe bombs that were there right before was this massive psyop. Okay, so probably the pipe bombs were part of the psyop. That makes logical sense to us. And now they're telling us, no, they had all this, and this is the other thing. The reason why, the other reason why we all thought it was a part of the psyop is because they just never found the suspect. And we thought, how difficult can this be? You are the best investigative agency on the planet, and you can't find this bomber, which you have video evidence of? That doesn't make any sense. It didn't make any sense to any of us. So we thought, okay, it must be part of the psyop. Now they find this guy, and it turns out, oh, he's not part of the psyop at all. He's just some random guy. But you remember I said that he lives in Virginia, and that's important? So I checked on the map. He's about an hour away from Langley. He's about 45 minutes away from the Pentagon. That's where he lives. That, to me, is very convenient. That's a very convenient reality. Because that's essentially where all the spooks live, right? Like all the, all your intelligence guys, your intelligence analysts, they all kind of live around that area, right? Because of course they do, because they go into work there. So it's kind of weird that they find this guy who looks like this. They find this guy, and he just happens to be a random bomber who just happens to live in Virginia, and they've had evidence on him for forever, like throughout the entirety of the Biden administration, apparently. And they just never went after him? They just never picked him up? Why? Why wouldn't they pick him up? Okay. I don't get it. I don't get it, personally. But anyway, let's keep reading. Federal law enforcement officials said they located Cole by using evidence they already had, not a new tip. Oh, sorry, I got to read this part. The pipe bombs were placed near the offices. Yeah, we know that. We know that. Okay, sorry, I read all this. But who is Brian Cole? Here's what we know so far about the alleged suspect. Brian Cole, 30, lives in Woodbridge, Virginia, a community in Prince William County located about 20 miles south of Washington. According to a criminal complaint filed in U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia, reviewed by USA Today, Cole resides in a home with his mother and other family members. And this is the other thing that I think is really weird. So this doesn't sound like an intelligence agent of any kind, right? From what I understand from his grandmother, and this is from another article here on the New York Post, apparently he was driving Uber recently. That was his job, driving Uber. Okay. And yeah, somebody's saying that he looks like Antifa. I actually do think he looks like Antifa. Something about him kind of screams Antifa. So, and this is where we get to the plausibility part. There is a plausible explanation for this, which is that it's just a coincidence, right? I mean, it is plausible. It doesn't seem that realistic to me, but it is plausible that the guy was just like, oh, there's going to be a big, because there was some whispers that maybe there's going to be some kind of like a riot or an insurrection or, a revolution or something like that's going to happen on January 6th. Because they were trying to confirm the electors. And everybody was like, we have to stop them confirming the electors. The reason that they were saying that was because they were expecting it to be done, through like a legal method, not through an insurrection, which we didn't even know that word until after January 6th. But it's plausible that some random terrorist type guy was like, oh, this is my chance. This is my opportunity. Because there's going to be a lot of people there. Maybe I'll get lost in the crowd. Maybe they blame it on somebody else. So there is some plausibility that it's just a coincidence. But man, that would suck, wouldn't it? If it's just a coincidence. All this time we've been like, oh, it's got to be part of the psyop. And then it turns out to just be, that's annoying. But sometimes that's how life is. Life isn't always this beautiful, like Hollywood type movie. Sometimes it's just ugly and messy and just doesn't work out rationally. It's just like people aren't rational, people aren't logical, people don't necessarily go, act in a way that all conforms and all the puzzle pieces fit together. So it is plausible that this is just some random Uber driver, Antifa dude who was like, I'm going to plant bombs at the Capitol. What's really weird is that I'm not aware of any manifesto. I'm not aware of any like message he was sending. Like normally a terrorist presents some kind of message. There's something that people understand why the bombs were put there. You know, people don't typically, if you're going to kill a bunch of people and it's for some kind of ideological reason, you want people to know what that reason is. All right, let's keep reading. Prince William County Public School Director of Communication, Dana Gulata, confirmed to USA Today that Cole graduated from Hileton High School in 2013. According to public records reviewed by USA Today, Cole does not have a criminal history, but does have several traffic violations on file, which took place after the pipe bomb incident. Yeah, traffic violations are annoying. I think we can all agree about that. Poor guy. All right. That was a joke. All right. Cole is charged with the use of explosive device, Bondi told reporters. There could be more charges to come. There was no new tip. There was no new witness. Just good, diligent police work and prosecutorial work. Cole's credit card and checking account records showed that he purchased multiple items as early as October 2019. This is what I'm saying. This is something he had planned for a long time. If this is really the guy and this is really what happened, this is something he had planned for a long time. October 19th through late 2020, consistent with the components used to manufacture 2 pipe bombs placed at the RNC and DNC offices, according to his 7-page charging document. Cole bought components including a galvanized pipe, end caps, electrical wire, battery clips, and white kitchen timers, the court records also said. Investigators tracked Cole's purchases. I can read, I promise. Investigators tracked Cole's purchases at Home Depot, Lowe's, Walmart, and Micro Center. And this is the thing that, like I was saying before, this is a lot of evidence. This is not like a little bit of evidence. I mean, I understand their like needle in a haystack theory that the Biden administration couldn't prosecute this guy or couldn't find this guy because there were so many tips and there were so many leads. But like, they obviously had more evidence on this guy than normal, than the sort of normal lead, right? He had bought all the right equipment and he was in the area. I don't think that you're going to find that combination with like a huge number of your leads, right? Maybe a couple. But this guy was like, to me, this is like a glowing red light. Like, of course you're going to be following up on that. But the Biden administration was just like, nah, he's fine. Maybe because he was black, and they're like, we don't want to implicate a black man. I mean, they're crazy, but I don't think they're that crazy. Maybe they are. Who knows? Let's see here. The suspect bought items including safety glasses, a wire stripping tool, and a machinist's file, which could be used to make pipe bombs, officials said. Cole then allegedly continued to buy the components after the pipe bombs were found. Including a kitchen timer, more 9-volt batteries, and galvanized pipes during January 2021. Okay, so they're suggesting that he was planning more bombings. A call to Cole's phone number listed in public records as well as to other relatives went unanswered on December 4th. Provider records show Cole's cell phone connected with towers consistent with his being at the area of the RNC and DNC offices on January 5th. So this is what I'm saying. They had both of these pieces of evidence, which to me really would have narrowed the search to him. In addition, court documents continued a Virginia license plate registered to a 2017 Nissan Sentra that he owns was captured on camera the same day at 7:10 p.m. at the South Capitol Street exit from Interstate 395 South. That's less than 1/2 mile from the location where the individual who placed the devices was first observed on foot. It was not immediately clear if he had obtained legal counsel. Okay, and then they go on to say that FBI agents raided his house. Now, this is also interesting. So this is, the New York Post did get a hold of his family members and people that lived near him, his neighbors. Let's see here. His distraught grandmother, Loretta, denied his involvement, describing him as autistic-like with no political leanings. So apparently he's not diagnosed as autistic, but he's autistic-like. Okay, let's see here. He's almost autistic-like because he doesn't understand a lot of stuff. I hope he's not talking, she told the Post in a phone interview. I hope he's not talking. That's a weird thing to say because I didn't read that the first time I read through this. That's a weird thing to say because she seems to be convinced that he's innocent. And if you're convinced that he's innocent, why would you care that they're not talking? I mean, I understand that it's like common sense that you don't want to talk, you want your lawyer there. But if he's totally innocent, that wouldn't be your initial thought. Like, don't talk to them. You know, your initial thought would be don't talk to them, I think, if you suspected maybe that he was guilty. So, I don't know. Maybe I'm reading into it. Let's see here now. Sharon FFS said, the real question is why now? Is the FBI trying to get some street cred back? I do think they're trying to get some street cred back. Now, here's the thing about that, because I did think through that, because there was this big show of force, you know, which I don't think was actually 100% necessary. But they wanted the cameras there. They wanted to see that they were doing something. There's a big press conference about it and everything like that. So I do think that, especially in light of the Miranda Devine story, which I do think hit Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, I think they hated that. I think they really wanted to make a show like, we're effective, we're doing great things here. You know, we're doing stuff, we're making arrests, we're making progress on cases. This can be true in one of two ways. You can make a big show of something that's real, a real accomplishment, or you can make a big show of something that's fake, right? An example of making a big show about something that was fake was the Gretchen Whitmer kidnapping. That was not real, but the FBI wanted to establish that, you know, look how awesome we are. We're catching these terrorists, and the reason they wanted to do that is because they wanted to discredit Trump supporters. They wanted to say Trump supporters are bad. Trump supporters are trying to kidnap Gretchen Whitmer. These are the bad guys. You should hate them. You know, Trump bad, MAGA supporters bad, etc. I don't think that's what's going on here. I hope not. No, but I have faith in Kash Patel. I have faith in Dan Bongino. I have faith in Pam Bondi. I know a lot of people don't. And I do think that they genuinely think that they've got the guy and they're making a big show about it because they have that confidence. So we're going to have more information to come for sure. But anyway, this is what his grandmother said. He's very naive. He would not hurt a fly. He's just not that kind of person. I don't believe this at all, she added. He's not a terrorist. I mean, it is his grandmother. I doubt she's going to be like, yeah, that little bastard's been trying to kill people for years. All right, let's see here. She said he worked at their family bail bonds company. Well, that's a weird coincidence. Brian Cole Bail Bonds, which was raided by the FBI. Neighbors outside his suburban Woodbridge, Virginia home said he shunned social interactions and often walked a chihuahua to a local 7-Eleven. He's very antisocial, very, a neighbor told the Post. He would never make eye contact, almost like he didn't see you. He was skeptical about Cole being the suspect, claiming that the man seen planting bombs on surveillance footage is taller than Cole. The guy I know that walks the dog is pretty short and he has really short legs, like uncommonly short legs. I would think that the gait analysis would be pretty easy to either rule him out or confirm because his legs are, I would say, uncommonly short. That's a really weird thing to notice about somebody. Because you imagine like you and your wife are walking down the street and you're like, wow, that guy's got really short legs. I mean, I shouldn't talk. I've got kind of short legs, if I'm honest. All right. The resident noted Cole stood out for wearing red Crocs and shorts all winter long. Meanwhile, Loretta said her grandson rarely leaves the house, only going out for grocery work. He's just a gentle person. Asked if her grandson was in D.C. on January 5th, Loretta said, well, I don't know. He was doing DoorDash for a while. And that's the thing that really I thought was weird. Because if this guy was, you know, somehow involved in intelligence work, I don't think he'd be doing DoorDash. But I don't know. If you've worked in intelligence before and you're like, some of us need a second job, let us know in the comments. All right. He doesn't have any ties to D.C., she added. I don't know why they included him in this. Well, I'm assuming they included him in this because he set up some bombs. That's why I think probably. But anyway, so I've laid out to you, you know, the reasons why I'm skeptical and the reasons why I think it's plausible. So right now, I'm going to be cautiously accepting the official narrative. And this is the really annoying thing about politics today. There is an official narrative to everything, right? There's always an official narrative. You know, sometimes that narrative is, you know, we don't know, we don't have evidence, whatever it is. But there's always an official narrative. And then there's always alternative narratives. There's always speculation. There's always, you know, various people that do what I do, presenting new ideas about what they think's going on. There's conspiracy theories. There's crazy conspiracy theories. Sometimes the alternative narrative is correct. Like, do you remember when they said that the COVID virus, COVID-19, came from the wet market? And then people noticed that there was a virology lab in the same area as the wet market, like the same area of China. And they went, wait a minute, might this virus have come from this lab? And, you know, the official narrative was, no, not possible. That didn't happen, right? And we're all like, but I think it is. Turns out we were right? The alternative narrative was right. Now, I've met some people, I have a very good friend actually, who almost never accepts the official narrative. In fact, he goes so far as to say, whatever the official narrative is, I'm going to assume it's wrong. And what he tends to do is adopt alternative narratives, whatever alternative narrative that he thinks is the most likely. He'll adopt that with far less scrutiny, with far less skepticism. And I don't like that. I think you should be skeptical of the official narrative, and I think you should be skeptical of alternative narratives. And if you want to believe the truth and you want to learn how to discern between what is true and what is false, you have to leave a certain amount of space in your brain available for accepting the official narrative of things. Because the official narrative can sometimes be true. I know we have been sort of like trained over the Obama years, trained over the Biden years to just reject the official narrative every single time. But in this case, it might be accurate. It's very hard to say at this point, but I do trust Patel, I do trust Bondi, I do trust Bongino, and for now, I'm going to very, very carefully and tentatively accept this official narrative. I can't wait to see more information on this. I think this is a huge story. Anyway, I have a few other interesting stories today if you guys want to hear them. These are things that aren't really related to the bombing thing, but let's have a look, because these are things that are kind of getting missed, I think, under this bombing story. Red State reported, oops, prestigious science journal retracts climate study that predicts imminent economic catastrophe. So here's the thing. Climate change predictions typically are based on models and, you know, other kind of speculative analyses by, you know, different disciplines in science. And they tend to be wrong a lot. Now, the way that the left will say, oh no, the climate models have always been right, is that the climate models predict a spectrum of possibilities. And they'll often go, oh, you know, this is the worst case possibility, this is the best case scenario. And the worst case scenario is always what gets reported, right? It gets reported in the media, it gets pushed by Democrat politicians, climate activists, even a lot of the researchers themselves will go, oh, we got to worry about the worst case scenario, we got to worry about the worst case scenario. And then when the best case scenario occurs, they go, oh, look, our climate model was right. And we're like, what are you talking about? All your predictions were like, we're all going to die. Nothing like that even happened. And they go, oh, no, but look at the spectrum of possibilities. This was the worst case scenario, this was the best case scenario, ended up being the best case scenario, just as we had predicted. Right? So that's how they kind of skate around it. So I don't know what's going on here, but let's have a look at this. This is not about, this looks like it's more about the relationship between ecology and economy. Whoo boy, sometimes you do something so embarrassing, so humiliating, that you want to hide in the closet. The prestigious science journal Nature may be thinking about doing that right about now. Just so you know, I have a friend who is a prominent research scientist, and there are basically two journals, like the top of the top of the top. If you can get research articles into these journals, you know, you're like a top tier researcher. And that's Science and Nature. One journal is called Science, one is called Nature. These are like the two top journals, scientific journals, and this is what everybody wants to get in. So the prestigious science journal Nature may be doing that right about now, because on Wednesday they officially retracted an influential 2024 climate report that predicted gloom and doom, death and misery, and impending economic catastrophe. As is the case with so much of the leftist climate narrative, their wild claims were quite simply unproven. In January 2024, the prestigious journal Nature released a study finding that climate change would cause far more economic damage by the end of the century than previous estimates had suggested. The conclusion grabbed headlines and citations around the world and was incorporated in risk management scenarios used by central banks. On Wednesday, Nature retracted it, adding to the debate on the extent of climate change's toll on society. Shocker, it seems as if they were relying on flawed data. The decision came after a team of economists noticed problems with the data for one country, Uzbekistan, that significantly skewed the results. If Uzbekistan were excluded, they found the damages would look similar to earlier research. Instead of a 62% decline in economic output by 2100 in a world where carbon emissions continued unabated, global output would be reduced by 23%. The house of cards that is climate science is coming crashing down. Nature is not a serious journal anymore. Red State's Ward Clark has long been busy calling out the shrill climate hysterics. There has been so much agitation and the climate that even noted environmental alarmist and Microsoft co-founder Bill Gates softened his language in October before the COP30 summit. We need to cut down on doomsday rhetoric, he argued, because the facts don't support the wild claims. And I will be putting out a video tomorrow morning about all of this, about the Bill Gates retraction, because I think it's actually quite a lot more significant than we gave it time for in the media. I think we got to focus a little bit more on that. So I also, by the way, this morning I put out a video on the Somali problem, right? And because these Somalians are not just, they don't seem to just be committing crimes here in the United States and be a little bit of a problem here. They seem to be a problem everywhere that they have resettled in the world. And it's crazy. Some of the stuff that these Somali immigrants are doing in Europe and around the world is horrific. But also tomorrow morning, I'm going to post this, hopefully tomorrow morning, maybe the next day. I'm going to post this climate video about climate change. Look, I've done some research into this, and we used to have something called what I call population growth hysteria. So the elites around the world, and I think this was a legitimate concern, right? They thought, okay, we're going to get so overpopulated that we're going to run out of food. We're going to run out of resources. There was a guy a couple hundred years ago who made this analysis. And all of these rich, powerful people were like, we got to do something to stop this, right? So they started up all these organizations that would stop people from procreating. And they actually did some pretty horrific things. Like they actually essentially sterilized a bunch of people in India to stop them having kids, because they were like, we have to stop population growth. They were obsessed with this. Now, in like the 1980s, 1990s, well, okay, I would say let's go to like the 1960s. 1960s, the population hysteria thing became really, really a popular idea. And it stopped being about food as much, because we had what they call the Green Revolution, and agriculture became a lot better, and we could produce a lot more food. So it instead became about the limitations of fossil fuels. We have to preserve our fossil fuels. We don't have enough fossil fuels to last forever. But they're going to run out eventually. They call them, that's why they call green energy, quote unquote, they call it renewable resources. The reason they call it renewable resources is because they want to say fossil fuels are not renewable. Those are finite resources. We only have so much of those. So like a lot of the rich, powerful people in the world are going, okay, how do we stop people from using so much fossil fuels, because we need to preserve those, because we need them to last for longer, long enough that technology can replace them. And so there was this panic. And in like the 1980s, 1990s, they came up with this idea of global warming. Well, what if we tell everybody that the climate is changing because of these fossil fuels? It was a very convenient message, right? So again, this whole idea was you've got to stop, you got to reduce your carbon footprint, you've got to reduce your fossil fuel usage, and it all relates back to the original population growth hysteria. And what's crazy is you'll find, if you look into it, a lot of these climate change activists at the top levels are also population growth alarmists as well. So it's all kind of tied together there. All right, so meanwhile, Nature said in a statement on their website, the authors acknowledge that these changes are too substantial for a correction. Leading to the retraction of the paper, the researchers are reworking the article with the updated data, and hopefully we'll have a peer-reviewed version ready in the near future. Their predictions are still on the "we're all going to die" variety. However, even with the updated data, the predictions are all still of the "we're going to die" variety, however, even with the updated data. But it's hard to take what they say at face value when they just screwed up this badly in one of the major scientific journals in the world. Lint Barrage, that's a weird name, Lint? That'd be weird. If your name was Lint, I think I would change it, right? Lint Barrage, chair of energy and climate economics at the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology in Zurich, pointed to other potential flaws in the study and had an excellent observation about confirmation bias. It's funny that we just talked about confirmation bias. It can feel sometimes, depending on the audience, that there's an expectation of finding large climate change estimates, said Ms. Barrage said. Oh, I assumed it was a man. That's funny. Okay, if your goal was to try to make the case for climate change, you have crossed the line from scientist to activist. And why would the public trust you? That's my question, too. Who wrote this? This is a good article. Bob Hodge. Well done, Bob Hodge. This is a great article, man. I don't know who you are, but this is him. Well written, well written. I like the little inflections. I like the little personal notes. I think it's great. Yeah, that's the big question. And we find this often with climate change stuff, that they do kind of shift into activist mode. A lot of these climate change researchers are activists. Like, why would you get into climate change research at this point in the universe, right, if you weren't a climate change activist? Like, people who don't really care that much about climate change are like, I don't think it's really a big deal. You're not going to go into climate change research. Going into climate change research, you're like, we're all going to die. I got to research this. So you've got, I think that the whole discipline, the whole, profession is just absolutely flooded with activists at this point. So yeah, it's a problem. It's a problem. Anyway, we've got other I'm just looking at the chat here. I'm not getting a lot of interaction from you guys. So if you are trying to write me, at least put my name in there or something so that I know. I think you guys are writing each other. But let's go on to the next story here. All right. Okay, so this guy, I mentioned before that people are not super happy with Pam Bondi. They're not super happy with all guys. Dan Bongino, and we want more arrests, right? We want more arrests. Now, this guy swears a lot, so if you got kids, maybe put headphones in. But I do think that this guy speaks for a lot of people on the right now. So let's listen to what he has to say.
You might want to turn your volume down, because I'm about to cuss a lot. But what I'm about to say, I know millions of Americans feel this way. But this message goes out to President Trump, Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, GOP, the Republican.
Sorry, I don't know what happened. Hold on.
Party. What the fuck is taking so long? You're You're about to complete your first year and no one has been held accountable of weaponizing the DOJ, the fraud that's been exposed. USAID and all that NGO money. They're fucking accountable yet. And we're getting sick and fucking tired of waiting for accountability. And I don't want to hear that bullshit. Lou, trust the process. It takes time to build a case. No, fuck that. You're in your first year. We know what you know, and we've been calling this shit out for years now. And no one has been held accountable. Not Obama, not Biden, not Clapper, not Brennan, not Comey, not Pelosi. And we've known about this for years. And we're getting sick and tired of fucking waiting. We fought day in and day out the last 10 years with our hands tied behind our fucking back, bringing the truth to these stupid ass Americans.
Okay, you get the idea. You get the idea. I'm not going to play the whole thing. He just goes on like that for a little while. But here's the thing that I think is kind of sad. First of all, he's a little too close to the camera. When you record yourself, maybe like hold it back a little bit. It's a little close. But yeah, I mean, the guy's right. Like, people are pissed off. This guy represents a lot of people in America right now. You know, and it really is frustrating because we do believe that laws have been broken. We do believe that certain people are guilty of certain things. I posted quite a few times, I posted this thing. What's that guy's name? Patrick something. What was his name? Irish name. Anyway, it doesn't. Patrick Byrne. Patrick Byrne came out years ago, around the time of the 2020 election, or just after the 2020 election, and he was like, "Look, the FBI approached me several years back, you know, before the 2016 election." He's talking about, and he says they had me set up a bribe between Hillary Clinton and a foreign national. And he goes, I was there for that. We recorded that. I gave the FBI those recordings. Sometime later, I had another meeting with the FBI, and I checked back with them because I didn't see anything on the news about them arresting Hillary. And I said, why didn't you arrest Hillary Clinton? And they go, oh, we're going to install her as president, and then we're going to pull the puppet strings. We're going to make her do what we want. And they're like, just shut up about it, or you're going to, you know, or people are going to come after you, kind of thing. That was a kind of a bold thing to say. You know, a lot of people sort of blew him off as like being full of crap or whatever. But like, now that we're in there, now that we've got Dan Bongino, now that we've got Kash Patel, now that we've got people in there who could potentially look into those files, just look into the files. Bring Patrick Byrne in. Say, who did you talk to with the FBI? How do we get this information? What were the dates? You know, find those files. Find that information. Arrest Hillary Clinton. If Hillary Clinton took bribes from foreign nationals, get her, arrest her. You know, there's other stuff too. There's a lot of stuff that can be looked at right now. You know, why aren't people going to prison for spying on Donald Trump's political campaign, for spying on the Trump administration? The whole thing with Russian collusion was set up by Obama and, you know, all of those. Who was Brennan? Brennan helped set that up. Comey. You know, people should be going to prison for that stuff. And here's why that's so critical, in my view, right? It's not revenge. Like, a lot of people are like, oh, the Republicans want revenge. You know, oh, you know, Donald Trump wants revenge. They all want revenge. You know, yeah, okay, I want revenge. That's true, but I do. But that's not really the critical part. You know, that's not really my primary motivation. What's my primary motivation? I know that there are bad people in the world. I know there are bad people in the world who have money, who are powerful, who are working in Washington, D.C., the bureaucracy. And they want to commit these kinds of crimes. They want to do these bad things, right? If you want to do bad things in D.C., and other people have done bad things before you, and they've not been investigated, or if they have been investigated, they've not been arrested. If they have been arrested, they've not been prosecuted, you know, whatever. These people aren't looked into, they're not arrested, they're not prosecuted, they're getting away with everything scot-free. What is your deterrent from doing your bad thing? You know what I mean? However, if every little thing is looked at, every person is arrested who's doing these little bad things, and everybody's being prosecuted, I want to see a barrage of prosecutions. I don't just want to see one or two big names. I want to see the big name. I want to see everybody else that was involved. And I want to see 10 other big names. You know, I want to see everybody who has been committing any kind of thing that is fraudulent in DC. I want to see them all arrested. I want to see a train of arrests from now until the point that Donald Trump gets out of office. Because it is a deterrent from anyone else doing anything criminal in Washington, D.C. I think that there is too much shady business going on in D.C. So that's my thinking. More as a deterrent than anything else, because you're always going to have bad people. And that is, yeah, and Sharon FFS jumps in and she says, that's why we're also jaded. No one in government has ever been held accountable. And that's right, and we're all getting very, very frustrated. So I respect what this guy is saying for sure. And let's move on to another story. This is a story that I brought up yesterday. This is a tweet that I had posted that did better than I had thought that it would. I normally don't get 2,000 likes on a tweet or 38.7 thousand views. That's not usual for me. I'm a pretty small fish on X for some reason. I don't know. I have like 100 and some thousand subscribers on X, followers, but I just don't get that much traction. So, usually I get like, maybe a couple hundred likes. So 2,300 likes is kind of a big deal. And it was a bit of a rant that I made, and I talked about this yesterday. I said, I think the reason a lot of people don't believe that gays are born this way is because of the weird flamboyant lisp. Most gay men speak normally growing up, and then one day they decide to start talking like they're gay. That is a decision. You weren't born with a genetic predisposition to talk gay. And it's not just in the US. There's a British version, they call it camp. There's an Australian version, there's a Scottish, German, etc. Also, you don't need to actually be naked in your gay parades. That's also a choice. There are a lot of things about homosexuality that are absolutely conscious decisions, so when you claim that homosexuality itself is somehow biological, it strains credulity. And so I posted that, and it obviously triggered a lot of people. There's a lot of really, defensive comments. There's a lot of hateful comments. There's people saying, "You seem to be thinking a lot about this, sir. Maybe you're trying to tell us something." Like they're trying to imply maybe I'm closeted and I'm thinking about this too much, or whatever. It's kind of weird that like the attack that some gay people use against you if you try to talk about this stuff intellectually. Well, maybe you're thinking about it because you're gay. Like that's like their attack. I always thought that was funny. Anyway, but just after I posted that, I noticed that there was this interview that Tucker Carlson did with Milo Yiannopoulos, who kind of faded into obscurity a few years back because he said something about being molested by a guy when he was a kid and how he didn't necessarily blame the guy or something like that. And a lot of people interpreted what he said as saying like pedophilia is okay, which I don't think that's what he was saying at all. But anyway, he kind of got marginalized, sidelined, and Tucker Carlson decided, you know what, let's interview this guy. He's got some interesting ideas. And Milo is often willing to say the stuff that like nobody else will say. And one of the things that he's said that I always thought was brilliant was that the born this way narrative was created because they wanted to have these special rights that black people had, right? Being black is an immutable characteristic. You cannot change that about yourself. So if you discriminate against a black person just because they're black, that is unjust. That's what we believe in this country. So we have the Civil Rights Amendment that say you can't discriminate against somebody for their immutable characteristics, like being black or a woman or something like that. So the LGBTQ community, the activists involved in that, decided, oh, if we can get the same status as black people, then we can have special rights as well. We can have special protections. So let's claim that being gay is not a choice, but rather that it's something that we're born with and we cannot help. Then we're victims, right? Because if you just make a choice and people don't agree with it, You know, like if you make a decision to essentially to be a douchebag and to cheat on your wife with like 100 women, nobody's really going to be sympathetic to that in the world, are they? Like if you hire a guy and you find out, oh, he's been sleeping with 100 other women and cheating on his wife for like the last 2 years, you're probably going to fire that guy because you don't want an unethical asshole working at your company, right? So back in like, you know, whatever it was, the 70s or the 80s, if somebody found out that an employee of theirs was gay, that in their minds was a similar, I guess, sexual perversion as, you know, essentially being a man whore. You know, they would just be like, okay, well, I don't want a man whore working at my offices. I don't want a gay guy working in my offices. I don't want a sexual deviant working at my offices. So they would fire the person. And gay people were like, okay, I don't want my, you know, personal life choices to affect my career. Therefore, we're going to put out this myth that all gay men are born gay, and therefore we can get these special protections. And that's how that kind of happened. Anyway, I learned all that from Milo Yiannopoulos. So I found this new clip of Milo talking about whether or not he's gay. And what he said was so insightful because Milo was gay for a long time. He was, I'm gay. That's what he would say, right? And man, I hope that doesn't get clipped. He would always say this. And then, I don't know, a few years back, he was like, oh, I'm not actually gay, actually. I'm straight now. And everybody's like, what? Not only did he claim that he was gay, but he claimed that he was gay most often with black men. It was a weird thing about Milo Yiannopoulos. Also, his mom's Jewish, but he's Catholic, so he claims the Jewish thing and Catholicism as well. So he kind of had this like bulletproof armor for criticizing a lot of different groups. He could criticize black guys because he had a black boyfriend. He could criticize Jews because he was Jewish. He could criticize gays because he was gay. It was actually an amazing thing. Anyway, let's hear what he has to say here, because when asked, you know, if he's gay, what the story is, because this is pretty fascinating.
Are you gay? Were you gay? Like, what is gay?
Nobody's gay. In almost every case, and certainly in every male case, it is a trauma response. It is not a sexuality. It is not part of what you are or who you are or a component of your personality. It is a set of behaviors that emerges in people with a number of very easily identifiable common etiologies.
Fascinating. Etiologies. I had to look up that word. I'm not familiar with that word. It just means causes, right? There are many causes for men to act out gay. And this is a theory that I actually had in college, because I went to college in Miami and I met a lot of gay dudes. And I remember thinking, like, there's something, like, there's like a reason that these guys are all gay. Like, every gay guy that I met seemed to have a reason he was gay. In fact, some would acknowledge it. So the born this way thing always seemed like BS to me, because a lot of gay men that I had met would say, oh no, I became gay because of this reason or that reason. Like, I went to high school with a guy, turned out to be gay, and I found him online, and I was like, hey man, what's going on? Because I knew he liked this. He was like, had a crush on this next door neighbor girl for years. People don't believe this story, by the way. I've posted this story online and they've gone, of all the things that didn't happen, this didn't happen the most. But this did happen, I promise you. And I texted this guy, you know, this was on Facebook years ago. I was like, hey man, hey, you're gay now. He's like, yeah, I'm gay. I go, but you liked girls. Like, we used to talk about girls. You used to be obsessed with this neighbor girl. And he wrote back, I kid you not, it was one of the saddest things I've ever read in my life. He wrote back, yeah, I liked girls, they just didn't like me. I thought, that is horrific, because it was kind of true. Like, he was a nerdy guy. It was sad, man. Okay, so, and then I've since looked into some things like, you know, what do they call it? Like, you know, what do they call that therapy where they're trying to, conversion therapy, where they're trying to get, so I looked into the conversion therapy thing, because like the LGBTQ community demonizes conversion therapy as like the worst thing in the world. So I watched a couple of videos on YouTube on that. You hear the stories of some men who eventually, you know, became gay in their lives. And man, the stories are so horrific. The stories are so horrific. Like, So when he's talking about etiologies in this, the reasons that men are gay, what he's trying to say there is like basically a lot of these guys are traumatized. They're dealing with some kind of like serious issue. And I had always had this thought that like, what if they're suffering from a mental illness, and this is like a self-destructive behavior that comes with mental illness, right? You like women, you're not attracted to men, but you go ahead and act out all these gay acts with men as a kind of punishment for yourself. Because this is a very common thing. I met a girl who was suicidal. She was from the Netherlands. She was suicidal. This was before I knew her. And she was a cutter. She used to cut herself. So she had scars everywhere, you know. And she started telling me about this one day. And she ended up getting herself involved in Muay Thai, like kickboxing, Muay Thai. And I said, you know, I've tried Muay Thai before, and when the strikes, like the kicks against the heavy bag, it's hard, man. Like if you kick it like slightly the wrong way and it pulls your skin, it can like mess you up. Like it is, it can be very, very painful if you're not used to it, you know. And these guys, and I said, does that bother you? And she goes, yeah, but I kind of like the pain. And her thing was, and then like, you know, they use these like wooden rollers and stuff to like desensitize their legs for this stuff. It's what guys do to make themselves tough for fighting, you know, if they're like competitive. It's brutal, man. Like the stuff that guys do is pretty brutal. Like they basically they kind of destroy all the nerves in their shins so that it doesn't hurt them when they you know, when they do these kicks. Anyway, I was talking to this girl, and yeah, she was a cutter. She was always about self-abuse because she hated herself. She had this low self-esteem. She had this low self-worth, so she always felt like she needed to force some kind of pain on herself. People are very self-destructive. This is like a real thing. So this was always my theory about homosexuality, that it was like a self-destructive expression of some degree of trauma or mental illness. And it seems to me that that is what Milo is saying here. So we're kind of on the same page there. Anyway, I wanted to play that clip. There's one more thing I wanted to play you guys today. And it's this. I think she's doing pretty well. Yeah, 3.9 likes, almost 100,000 views. Okay, so a lot of people are watching this. This is nuts. So Germany has very strict laws against any kind of Nazi-related anything. Like you're not allowed to have swastikas of any kind anywhere. You're not allowed to own that stuff. I think maybe you can have historical items. I don't know. I'm not 100% sure on that. Because a buddy of mine did have his grandfather's old like leather overcoat, like his actually like military Nazi overcoat from World War II. And it is awesome, by the way. I mean, not that I want to advocate Nazism in any way as a philosophy, but the coat was great. Like, I presume it was designed by Hugo Boss. Anyway, you're not allowed to talk about anything Nazi-related, promote anything Nazi-related in Germany. So now this girl is accused of posting a video of a Nazi salute, right, in Germany. Well, she's German, but I think she's in America now. And this is a very serious crime. Like, you can go to prison for this. So this is her story, and it's a little bit long, but I'm going to play it for you because it's definitely worth watching. And she's a charming girl. She's pretty cute. So let's have a look at this.
I'm being investigated for a Hitler salute that I supposedly posted with the words, "Because we're tired of the liberal bullshit." However, there is no Hitler salute, and there has never been a Hitler salute. But the police leaked this information and the entire story to the national media, and now it's making headlines before I even received the files myself. They are actually Elon Musking me.
And I just want to say thank you for making it happen. Thank you.
1 year after the media called me the Musk Whisperer. How ironic. Just a few days after I announced my asylum application in the United States of America, I got a message from my little sister informing me that I received a letter from the police. She kindly opened it for me and told me that I was charged with a hate crime, multiple actually, for X posts. Unfortunately, in this police report, I don't get any further information. They don't disclose which ex-posts had been affected, so naturally all I could do was request the files from the police with my attorney and not appear at the police station because, unfortunately for the German police, I am not in Germany, nor will I be in Germany for the foreseeable future, because I just applied for asylum in the United States of America. It takes quite a while for the prosecution to receive the files and then for me to actually get any insight into which crimes I supposedly allegedly committed. But just a few days later, I wake up, I go on X, and I am surprised by national media headlines saying that I'm being investigated for hate crimes and specifically for a Hitler salute. And I was instantly thinking to myself, there is no way that I posted a Hitler salute, because that's a crime that you cannot even conceive in America. That's multiple years behind bars, instantly. The attacks on Elon Musk were just superficial. Those were media slander attacks. But in my case, if I actually posted a Hitler salute and I glorified it with the words "because we're tired of the liberal bullshit," that's a very severe crime. So I was frantically looking through my tweets to see which one had been impacted, because I didn't even remember this specific quote. And this is what I found. A legacy media article. We're talking about left-wing legacy media about the AfD politician Maximilian Krah. And I had posted a screenshot of this very article, which I will show you here. And he's surrounded by a bunch of fans. And this article is basically talking about how the right is now becoming cool again amongst the youngsters of Germany, which is correct. And as you can see, this guy in the corner of this article is raising both arms. And let me just zoom in for you so you can actually see it. He's raising both arms. You see that the thumbs are turned inward, and he's wearing the same Adidas jacket on both arms. You absolute morons. This is not a Hitler salute, nor did I ever perceive it to be a Hitler salute. I'm not gaslighting. I'm just not paranoid and obsessed with finding ways to implement dog whistles in my posts. If the legacy media try to implement a Hitler salute in this, or imply that this could resemble a Hitler salute, here, then I think they should be investigated.
She talks about this a little bit more. She talks about how she's trying to get asylum in America. That's the craziest thing to me, that you can get a... So we're giving all these asylees from third world countries access to the United States when I think that a lot of it is fraud and they don't deserve it. This girl, this blonde-haired, blue-eyed German girl, actually needs asylum in the United States because the German government is going after her. She talks about how they're trying to destroy the AfD party in Germany, and they're trying to stop it because it's becoming too popular, and they're trying to destroy her. And it's awful. It's what they're trying to do to this girl is absolutely terrible. The German government's nuts. Frankly, I think that they need to end the whole, you can't, do a Heil Hitler salute, you can't do, because to me it looks like what they're doing is like selective prosecution, right? You show me the man, I'll show him the crime, kind of like USSR type tactics. This is why conservatives prefer small government, right? Lower regulations, fewer laws. You don't want to give the government that much power over you. We're constantly talking about this, right? We want to reduce the number of powers that the federal government has, not increase the number of powers, because it will be abused. The more laws that you have, the more regulations you have, the more abuse you risk. And in this particular case, they're going after this girl for something that is obviously ridiculous. Anyway, I thought I'd bring you guys attention to that. I thought that was awful. Who is this, Mr. Reagan? Somebody asked. What's her name? Naomi Seat. I don't know if the B is silent. I don't know how to pronounce her name, but anyway, she's pretty popular. She posts on X all the time, and I think she's because she's like a cute young girl. People like her. There's obviously people have advantages. Posting on this kind of stuff. If you're a conservative and you don't necessarily fit the people's idea of what a conservative is, which is like straight white Christian male like myself, you get a lot more attention, right? You can be more successful. I think she's got a lot of subscribers. Let's see what she's got. Yeah, 462,000 subscribers or followers. Yeah, she's pretty big. I've seen her around. But anyway, that is about it for today. I did want to show you guys another meme. I always like to end on a funny meme. I prefer to show you guys more funny clips. I didn't get to a lot of funny clips today, but at least let's go ahead and watch or take a look at the meme of the day. All right, there we go. Sorry about that. Okay. God, I swear that's the last glitch that will ever happen on this show. It's going to be perfect from now on. Anyway, so this is the original Idiot versus the Disney remake. Obviously, I thought this was funny. AOC is like Latina. She's not white necessarily, but I think it still works. I think the meme still works. I think it's funny. I'll bring you guys another funny meme tomorrow night. I wish I had more funny clips today, but there was obviously this big story. So I just kind of went through the more serious ones. And hopefully I'll have more funny clips for you tomorrow. And another meme, which will be even funnier than this one, hopefully. And until then, remember, it's not that our liberal friends are ignorant. It's just they know so much that is not so. Good night, guys. I will see you